My name is Melissa, and I'm 23 years old. The last thing I remember before everything went black was the Phoenix sun beating down on the Target parking lot, turning the asphalt into waves of heat. I'd just finished loading groceries into my trunk: ramen, store-brand bread, the cheapest protein bars I could find, when pain exploded through my abdomen like someone had stabbed me with a hot knife. I hit the ground hard. Someone screamed. The world tilted sideways, all bright Arizona sky and concerned faces peering down at me. Then sirens. Then nothing. I woke up in an ambulance, tubes in my arms, a paramedic's face inches from mine. Stay with me, Melissa. Stay with me. What's happening? My voice came out like gravel. Your appendix ruptured. It's gone septic. We're getting you to the hospital now, the ER doctor was blunt. Without immediate surgery, you have maybe 48 hours. We need to operate right now. Before I tell you what my father said when I called him from that hospital bed, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe. Trust me, what happens next will show you how family can be your biggest enemy. I woke up in a recovery room that smelled like antiseptic and fear. The surgery had taken 3 hours. They'd removed my appendix, cleaned up the infection, and pumped me full of antibiotics strong enough to kill whatever was trying to kill me. The nurse checking my vitals was kind, her voice soft. You're lucky. Another few hours and we'd be having a very different conversation. Lucky. I didn't feel lucky. I felt like someone had filleted me open and stitched me back together with fishing line. The financial counselor arrived before I was fully conscious. Her clipboard held numbers that made my vision swim. Emergency surgery, $6,800. Anesthesia, $1,200. 3 days hospital stay, $2,400. Medications, antibiotics, follow-up care. The total came to $12,347. Your insurance shows as inactive, she said, not unkindly. Lapsed 3 weeks ago. I'd been working 2 jobs: mornings at a boutique in Scottsdale, evenings catering events across Phoenix. When the boutique cut my hours to avoid giving me benefits, my insurance went with it. I'd meant to sign up for marketplace coverage. Life got busy. I got careless. Now I was paying for it. We can set up a payment plan, the counselor offered. But we'll need a down payment. $2,000 minimum. I had $800 in my checking account. That was rent, utilities, groceries for the month. I called Dad from that hospital bed, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. Richard Whitmore owned half a dozen commercial properties in Scottsdale, drove a Range Rover, played golf at clubs that charged more for membership than I made in a year. Dad, I need help. My voice cracked. I need $12,000. I almost died. The surgery, Melissa. His voice was cool, measured. The same tone he used in business meetings. You're 23 years old. You're an adult now. Adults handle their own problems. I can't afford this. If I don't pay, they'll send me to collections. My credit, then you'll figure it out. That's what adults do. They figure things out. I in the background, I heard Mom. Richard, maybe we should. Lisa, stay out of this. Melissa needs to learn responsibility. He hung up. I stared at the phone, at the peeling paint on the hospital wall, at the 4 in my arm still dripping antibiotics. Growing up, Trevor had crashed Dad's car at 17. Dad bought him a new one the next week. Trevor had failed out of his first semester at community college. Dad paid for a tutor and got him into UCLA. Trevor had maxed out credit cards, blown through allowances, needed bail money after a DUI. Dad had always figured it out for Trevor, but when I called from a hospital bed, barely 24 hours post-surgery, he told me to be an adult. They discharged me on day 4 with a packet of instructions I could barely read through the pain medication fog. Wound care. Antibiotic schedule. Warning signs of infection. A bill for the remaining balance after I'd scraped together a minimal down payment by maxing out my one credit card. You'll need follow-up appointments, the discharge nurse said. 2 weeks, then 4 weeks. Don't skip them. Sepsis can come back. Follow-up appointments I couldn't afford. I took a lift home because I couldn't drive yet. $23 I didn't have. My studio apartment in Tempe felt smaller when I walked in, the air stale, dishes still in the sink from the morning I'd collapsed. Janelle showed up an hour later with groceries and concern. We'd been best friends since high school, and she'd gone into nursing while I'd bounced between jobs trying to survive. She took one look at me and started cooking. "You're staying with me tonight," she announced. "I'm not letting you be alone. I have to work tomorrow." "Melissa, you just had emergency surgery. You need to rest." "I need to pay rent." The collection calls started within a week. Professional voices leaving messages about payment arrangements, consequences of non-payment, damage to credit scores. I deleted them and picked up a third job doing inventory at a warehouse on weekends. My body screamed in protest. The incision pulled when I reached for things, ached when I stood too long, burned when I lifted boxes I had no business lifting. But rent was due. The hospital wanted their money. My credit card was maxed. I sold my TV, my laptop, anything worth more than $20 on Facebook Marketplace. A girl I barely knew bought my nice winter coat for $15. I needed that coat. Phoenix gets cold at night in December, but I needed rent money more. The church I'd grown up attending heard through someone's cousin that I was struggling. Sister Patricia organized a meal train. Brother Daniels, who owned a small construction company, gave me $100 cash and told me not to pay it back. Mrs. Chen from the neighborhood brought me soup and sat with me while I cried. These were people who barely knew me. People who had no obligation. But they showed up when my own father told me to figure it out. Janelle checked my incision every other day, redressing the wound, watching for infection. "You're pushing too hard," she warned. "Your body needs time to heal." My body needs rent. 2 months passed in a haze of exhaustion and pain. I worked 50, 60, 70 hours a week. I ate ramen and store-brand bread. I avoided friends because social activities cost money. I ignored the letters from the hospital's collection department, from the credit card company, from my landlord asking why rent was 3 days late. My credit score dropped 100 points. Then another 50. The financial counselor at the hospital mentioned lawsuits if I didn't commit to a payment plan. I lay awake at night doing math that never worked out, no matter how many times I recalculated. Income minus expenses. Debt minus payments. Survival minus dignity. I thought about Dad in his Scottsdale mansion. Mom in her designer kitchen. Trevor doing whatever Trevor did with his days, unburdened by things like hospital bills or consequences. I thought about the little girl I'd been, always told to be strong, be independent, be grateful for what she had. I was grateful. But I was also drowning, and nobody in my family even noticed I was going under. 2 months of grinding through pain and poverty brought me to Thanksgiving at my parents' Scottsdale mansion. The house sat on 2 acres of desert landscaping, all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows that caught the sunset over Camelback Mountain. Worth at least $3 million, probably more given the neighborhood. I pulled my beat-up Honda into the circular driveway behind a sleek black Tesla with temporary tags. Trevor's new toy. Of course. My surgical scar throbbed as I climbed out of the car. I'd worked a double shift at the boutique that morning, then rushed to help cater a luncheon in Paradise Valley. My feet ached. My back screamed. The incision site where they'd removed my appendix felt like someone was pressing a hot iron against my stomach. Trevor burst through the front door before I reached it, designer jeans and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He'd put on weight since I'd last seen him, the good kind, gym muscle and expensive meals. "Mel! You made it!" He hugged me like we were close, like he hadn't ignored my texts asking for help with medical bills. His girlfriend Brittany trailed behind, phone already up, filming everything. She had that Instagram aesthetic down perfectly, long box braids, full makeup, outfit coordinated to match Trevor's shoes. "This is so cute," she cooed at her phone screen. Family vibes. Thanksgiving gratitude content. Inside, Mom was setting the table with her good china. Lisa had always been beautiful, but stress had carved lines around her mouth that hadn't been there a year ago. She hugged me tight, held on a little too long. "You look tired, baby," she whispered. "I'm fine, Mom." She pulled back, searched my face. "Are you eating enough? You're so thin." "I'm managing." Dad appeared from his study, scotch already in hand though it wasn't even 4 o'clock. Richard had that developer swagger, expensive watch, custom suit even on a holiday, hair graying at the temples in a way that magazines called distinguished Melissa. He nodded at me like I was a business associate, not his daughter. Dad, still working retail? He made it sound like a moral failing point. 2 jobs, actually. Sometimes 3. Well, that builds character. He turned to Trevor. Son, tell your sister about the progress on Tastedash. She could learn something about ambition. Trevor launched into his pitch while Mom finished setting the table. Extended family started arriving, aunts, uncles, cousins who barely knew my name. Everyone gravitated toward Trevor, asking about his business, admiring Brittany's engagement ring that I was just now noticing. I sat at the far end of the table, the same spot I'd occupied since childhood. Close enough to be present, far enough to be forgotten. Mom kept glancing at me, then at Dad, her hands trembling slightly as she passed the rolls. Something was coming. I could feel it in the weight of her silence. Trevor was 4 glasses deep in Dad's expensive Cabernet when his filter started slipping. Brittany had finally put down her phone to actually eat, though she kept checking the screen between bites, tracking engagement on her earlier posts. I saw the beauty of Tastedash, Trevor said, his voice getting louder, more animated, is that we're not just another delivery app. We're revolutionizing the entire restaurant partnership model. Uncle Dennis nodded politely. Aunt Patricia pretended to be interested. Dad beamed with pride. We've got major investors lined up, Trevor continued, refilling his glass. Big money. Silicon Valley money. How much are we talking? Dennis asked. Trevor glanced at Dad, who gave the smallest shake of his head. But the wine had loosened my brother's tongue past the point of caution. Let's just say we're well funded. He grinned, that cocky smile he'd perfected in high school. Dad came through big time. $340,000 to disrupt the industry. The number hit me like a physical blow. My vision blurred at the edges. My hands started shaking so badly I had to set down my fork. $340,000. I'd called Dad from a hospital bed, terrified and alone, begging for $12,000. He'd told me to figure it out. To be an adult. While he was sitting on enough money to save my life 30 times over. You had $340,000. My voice cut through Trevor's monologue. The table went quiet. Dad's expression hardened. Melissa, you had that much money for his 3rd failed startup. I stood up, my chair scraping against the marble floor. Fresh Flow crashed. Quick Bite went under. And you gave him almost $500,000 for another app? It's different this time, Trevor said, but his confidence was cracking. Tastedash has real potential. I called you from the hospital. My voice was shaking now, hot tears building behind my eyes. I was dying. Septic. The doctors said 48 hours. And you told me to figure it out myself. You're being dramatic, Dad said, his tone dismissive. He took another sip of Scotch. $12,000. That's what I needed. You had $340,000 for him, but not $12,000 for me? Dad set down his glass with deliberate precision. Trevor has potential, Melissa. He's building something. You've always been good at surviving on your own. You don't need handouts. The cruelty of it stole my breath. Around the table, everyone found somewhere else to lift their plates, their drinks, the painting on the wall. Trevor laughed, actually laughed. Come on, Mel. Don't be so sensitive. This is business. Brittany had her phone up again, recording. Later, I'd realized she'd captured the whole thing. Mom's fork clattered against her plate. Tell her the truth, Richard. Or I will. Dad's face changed. The dismissive confidence drained away, replaced by something I'd never seen before, panic. The silence stretched like a rubber band pulled too tight. Dad's knuckles went white around his Scotch glass. Mom's hands were shaking, tears streaming down her face. Tell me what? I demanded. What truth? Lisa, don't do this, Dad warned, his voice low and dangerous. She deserves to know. Mom stood up, her chair tipping backward. She's been working herself to death while her voice broke. While we lied to her face for 8 years. Mom, what are you talking about? She turned to me, and I saw something break open in her expression. Years of holding secrets, of keeping peace at any cost. Your grandmother left you money. For college. $80,000, specifically for your education. She put it in writing, made your father promise. The room tilted. What? I gave that money to Trevor, Dad said flatly, like he was discussing a business transaction. He needed seed funding for Fresh Flow. It was an investment in the family's future. You told me there was nothing left. The words came out as a whisper. When I asked about college money, you said Grandma's estate was gone. Medical bills from before she died. I made a business decision. I worked full-time through community college. My voice cracked. Overnight shifts at a warehouse. Weekend catering gigs. I lived on ramen and slept 4 hours a night so I could afford tuition, and look how strong it made you, Dad said, as if that justified everything. Trevor went to UCLA, I said, the full weight of it crushing down on me. Private university. You paid for his apartment. His car. His fraternity dues. He was building connections, Dad replied. Networking. That's how you get ahead in this world. Trevor had gone quiet, staring at his plate. Brittany's phone was still recording. Mom, you knew? I turned to her. You knew he stole my college fund? I found out 3 years ago. She was sobbing now. I've been fighting with him ever since. I wanted to tell you, but he said it would destroy the family. The family was already destroyed, I said quietly. I just didn't know it yet. I grabbed my purse and walked toward the door. Behind me, Dad was yelling something about disrespect and gratitude. Trevor was trying to explain why it made sense, why I didn't understand business. I didn't look back. 3 days after Thanksgiving, I was lying on my couch in my studio apartment, staring at the water stain on the ceiling that looked vaguely like Texas, when my phone buzzed with an email notification. The sender was a string of random numbers and letters at a throwaway domain. No name. No profile picture. The subject line made my stomach drop. You deserve to know what your father is really funding. My finger hovered over the delete button. Spam. Had to be spam. Or worse, someone from Thanksgiving trying to mess with me after Brittany's video had gone semi-viral in our extended family's group chats, but something made me open it. The email itself was brief, almost cryptic. Melissa, your brother's businesses aren't what they appear to be. Neither is your father's real estate company. The attached documents prove it. You've been asking the wrong questions. It's not about favoritism. It's about covering up crimes. Do what you think is right. A friend. My hands shook as I scrolled down to the attachments. 12 files. Bank statements. Wire transfers. Legal documents with official seals. Corporate filings from the Arizona Corporation Commission. PDF scans of handwritten notes. This wasn't spam. Someone had spent serious time compiling this. I downloaded everything to my laptop, my heart hammering. Who sent this? Why now? Why to me? The files were labeled by year and company name. Fresh Flow. Quick Bite. Taste Dash. Richard Whitmore Development LLC. Cross-reference transactions highlighted in yellowed. I needed help. This was beyond me. I texted Janelle. Can you come over? Now? I need your eyes on something. She responded in seconds. On my way. Whatever was in these files, someone wanted me to find it badly enough to risk exposing themselves. The question was whether I was ready for what I was about to discover. Janelle arrived 40 minutes later with coffee and her reading glasses. We spread my laptop and printed documents across my tiny kitchen table, the overhead light casting harsh shadows on the pages. Walk me through what you know, she said, pulling her braids into a ponytail. Trevor's had 3 startups. All supposedly failed. But Dad keeps funding them. Right. And you just found out he's been bankrolling these to the tune of hundreds of thousands. I clicked open the first folder. Fresh Flow, 2016. Trevor was 22, fresh out of UCLA. The pitch was meal prep delivery for busy professionals. The bank statements told a different story. Money flowed in from Dad's development company, labeled as consulting fees and marketing services. But the outgoing transactions made no sense. Payments to vendors that didn't exist. Shell companies registered in Nevada and Delaware. Money moving in circles, coming back to accounts connected to Dad's properties. "This isn't a failed business," Janelle said quietly. "This is money laundering." We moved to QuickBite, the 2019 venture. Restaurant partnership platform, according to Trevor's pitch deck. The reality was more complex. Dad's real estate company would buy commercial properties, dramatically inflate their appraisal values, then use QuickBite's fake revenue projections to justify the inflated prices to lenders and investors. "He's falsifying property values," I said, my voice hollow. "Using Trevor's fake business numbers to commit loan fraud." "Keep going," Janelle urged, her nursing training kicking in. "Stay calm, assess the full situation before reacting." Taystash was the current operation, and it was the most elaborate yet. The documents showed a cryptocurrency investment scheme. Trevor's app wasn't really for food delivery at all. It was a front for recruiting investors into a digital currency venture tied to Dad's properties. The investor list made my blood run cold. Names I recognized. Mr. Henderson, who owned 3 barbecue restaurants in South Phoenix. The Morales family, who'd run a community center in my old neighborhood. The Johnsons, the Washingtons, the Rodriguezes, all successful Black and Latino business owners, all of them had invested in Taystash's revolutionary blockchain-backed restaurant financing model. All of them had lost everything. "Your brother isn't incompetent," Janelle said, reading over my shoulder. "He's complicit. These operations are too sophisticated for him to not know." I found the text messages in the final folder. Encrypted chat log someone had screenshotted. Trevor and Dad coordinating stories. Trevor threatening to go to authorities if Dad didn't keep funding his lifestyle. Dad threatening to pin everything on Trevor if he didn't cooperate. They're protecting each other, I realized. Dad can't cut Trevor off because Trevor has documentation of the fraud. Trevor can't walk away because he's in too deep. It wasn't father-son love. It was mutual blackmail dressed up as family loyalty. "Melissa." Janelle's voice was tight. "Do you understand what you're holding? This is federal crime territory. Wire fraud. Securities fraud. Money laundering." I understood perfectly. My father and brother had destroyed people's lives. And they'd done it with money that should have been mine. We spent the next 3 hours building a timeline. The pattern was devastatingly clear. Richard Whitmore Development would identify successful minority-owned businesses in gentrifying neighborhoods. He'd approach them with promises of opportunity zone investments, tax breaks, expansion capital. Trevor's startup would provide the tech industry legitimacy. These weren't just real estate deals, they were innovative public-private partnerships leveraging emerging technology. The pitch worked because Dad and Trevor looked the part. Successful Black businessman and his Stanford-educated son. They spoke the language of entrepreneurship and community development. They name-dropped the right politicians, the right nonprofits, then they'd inflate property values, use fake revenue projections from Trevor's companies to secure loans, take investor money, and let everything collapse. The properties would go into foreclosure. The investors would lose their capital. Dad and Trevor would walk away clean, money already moved through shell companies. Mr. Henderson's story was in the files. He'd invested $200,000 his entire expansion fund into Taystash's restaurant financing platform. The building he was supposed to buy for his 4th location went to foreclosure before the deal closed. He lost everything. Nearly lost his existing restaurants trying to cover the loss. The Morales family had owned their building in South Phoenix for 30 years. 3 generations had run businesses there: a bakery, a seamstress shop, a tax preparation office. They'd borrowed against it to invest in Dad's opportunity zone development. When it collapsed, they couldn't make the loan payments. Foreclosure came fast. I recognized more names. Families from my old church. Parents of kids I'd gone to school with. The community that had helped me when I was drowning in medical debt. My family had destroyed them. The documents estimated total losses at over $3 million. 37 families. 42 businesses impacted. All while Dad preached about community development and Trevor posted motivational quotes about disrupting industries. He questioned wasn't what they'd done, it was what I was going to do about it. Janelle left at 3 in the morning. I sat alone with the documents spread across my table, watching the sky lighten over Tempe, turning my own father and brother to the FBI. That's what the evidence demanded. Federal crimes. Years in prison. The family name destroyed, but they weren't abstract criminals in a news story. They were Dad, who taught me to ride a bike. Trevor, who used to build blanket forts with me on rainy days. Mom would be devastated. Extended family would choose sides. Holidays would never exist again. My phone buzzed. Janelle had texted, "These aren't just numbers on paper. These are our people losing everything." She was right. Mr. Henderson had catered my high school graduation for free when he found out we couldn't afford it. I remembered him setting up tables in our backyard, refusing payment, saying, "You invest in your community, and your community invests in you." Dad had destroyed him. Mrs. Morales used to bring my mom homemade tamales every Christmas, dozens of them wrapped in corn husks, still warm. She'd hug me tight and tell me I was going to do great things. Her building was gone now. Her family's businesses scattered. Dad had taken everything from her, the community that had helped me survive when I was dying in a hospital, the church members who brought meals, the neighbors who gave me rides to follow-up appointments, the small business owners who hired me when I was desperate. These were the people my family had targeted and destroyed. If you've ever had to choose between loyalty and justice, drop a comment. What I decided to do next changed everything. I opened my laptop and started making calls. I created an anonymous email account and spent the next week reaching out to victims. I kept my identity hidden, introducing myself only as someone investigating Richard Whitmore Development's business practices. Mr. Henderson responded within hours. We met at a diner in Mesa, far from Scottsdale. He looked older than I remembered, exhaustion carved into his face. $200,000, he said, stirring sugar into coffee he wouldn't drink. That was supposed to be my fourth location. Prime spot in Arcadia, foot traffic from 3 schools, everything I'd worked for. He showed me the contracts, the promises Dad had made. The property appraisal that claimed the building was worth $800,000 when it was really worth maybe $4 million. The Taste partnership agreement that guaranteed revenue projections Trevor knew were fabricated. I mortgaged my house to make up the difference when the deal fell through, Mr. Henderson said. Nearly lost everything. My wife left me over the stress. Thought I was having a breakdown. Mrs. Morales met me at a park near her old neighborhood. She brought her granddaughter, who played on the swings while we talked. 3 generations, she said, watching the little girl. My grandmother started the bakery in that building in 1987. My mother ran the seamstress shop. I did taxes. All gone. The foreclosure had happened fast. Dad's development company had convinced them to refinance using inflated property values. When the Opportunity Zone investment collapsed, they couldn't make the payments. The bank took everything in 90 days. We trusted him, Mrs. Morales said. He talked about building up the community, keeping it in our hands. And the whole time, he was setting us up. I documented everything. 37 families. Some lost businesses. Others lost homes. All of them trusted Dad because he was Black, successful, and talked about uplifting the community. Trevor's tech startup credentials made it feel legitimate, modern, safe. The pattern was clear. Dad targeted successful minority business owners in neighborhoods he wanted to redevelop. He used Opportunity Zone tax incentives as bait. Trevor's companies provided the tech industry credibility. They'd extract money, let everything collapse, and buy the foreclosed properties for pennies. I built a website, uploaded every document, every testimony, every piece of evidence. I sent the link to 3 places: a local investigative reporter at the Phoenix New-Times, the FBI's Phoenix Field Office, and the Arizona Attorney General's Consumer Fraud Division. Then I set up the meeting. I texted Dad, "We need to talk about financial planning." "I'm ready to listen." His response came immediately, "About time." "Coffee tomorrow?" 10 m, Copper Star on Mill Avenue, I replied. "Public. Busy. Witnesses everywhere." I texted Trevor separately, "Dad mentioned you might have opportunities in your new venture. Can we talk?" He took longer to respond, but eventually, "Yeah, sure. Taste Dash is expanding. Could use someone with your work ethic on the ground floor." The manipulation was so casual it almost made me laugh. I told them both to come to Copper Star at 10. I didn't mention the other person would be there. "Let them figure it out," Mom called that night. "Your father said you reached out." "Melissa, I'm so glad. He's been worried about you." "I know, Mom. I'll see you both tomorrow." "I won't be there, baby. This is between you and your father. Business talk." Her voice carried relief, like she thought this meant healing. I didn't correct her. Janelle confirmed she'd meet me at 9:30. We'd go in together. I printed copies of the key documents, slid them into a folder. One more night. Then everything would change. I barely slept. Dad arrived at Copper Star first, Mom trailing behind him. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her purse strap. Dad wore a polo shirt and khakis, casual for him, but still expensive. Everything about him screamed money. Janelle and I were already seated in the back corner, 2 cups of coffee growing cold between us. "Melissa." Dad pulled out a chair, settled in like he owned the place. "I'm glad you're ready to have a real conversation about your future." Mom kissed my cheek before sitting. "You look better, baby. Less stressed." Trevor rushed in 10 minutes late, a new Rolex catching the morning light. He grabbed a chair from another table, dropped into it with the careless energy of someone who'd never faced real consequences. Sorry. Investor call ran long. We're closing another funding round." He grinned at me. "Actually, perfect timing. We're looking for people to handle ground operations, customer service, vendor relations. Entry level, but it's a foot in the door." "How generous," I said quietly. Dad leaned forward. "Melissa, I want to talk to you about building wealth. Real wealth. You've been working hard, I respect that, but you're thinking too small. Retail jobs, catering, that's survival mode. Let me teach you about investment, about leverage." I wanted to give you one chance before I do what I have to do. I pulled the folder from my bag and placed it on the table. The shift was immediate. Dad's expression hardened. Trevor's smile froze. I opened the folder, spread the documents across the coffee-stained table. Bank statements. Wire transfers. Victim testimonies. Corporate filings showing shell companies. Screenshots of text messages between Dad and Trevor coordinating their lies. Dad's face drained of color. Trevor stopped mid-sip of his latte, the cup hovering near his mouth. "You stole my college fund to fund a criminal enterprise." My voice was steady, calm. $80,000 that Grandma left specifically for me. "You gave it to Trevor to start laundering money through fake businesses." "Melissa," Dad started, "you let me nearly die rather than interrupt your money laundering operation." $12,000. I was septic. The doctors said I had 2 days. "And you told me to figure it out because you were too busy covering up fraud." "You don't understand business," Dad said, his voice sharp. "You're looking at complex financial transactions through a child's lens." Mr. Henderson lost $200,000. I met his eyes. He catered my high school graduation for free. "Remember that, Dad? You were there. You shook his hand and told him his barbecue was the best in Phoenix." Trevor set down his cup. "Mel, listen, Mrs. Morales lost her family's building. 3 generations of businesses gone because you convinced her to refinance based on fake appraisals. She used to bring Mom tamales every Christmas." Mom's hand covered her mouth, tears streaming silently. "The Johnsons, the Washingtons, the Rodriguez family, 37 families total. Over $3 million stolen. All of them trusted you because you talked about community development and opportunity zones. Trevor's tech credentials made it seem legitimate. Trevor's face twisted. You're going to ruin this family over nothing? Over some bad investments that didn't work out? You already ruined it. I closed the folder. I'm just making sure you can't ruin anyone else. Dad's hand shot across the table, gripping my wrist. How much do you want? 100,000? That covers your medical bills, your student loans, sets you up. We forget this misunderstanding. I pulled my hand away. I don't want your money. Mom reached for me, her hand finding mine. She knew. Of course she knew. She'd lived with this for years, trapped by fear and dependence. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry, baby. I stood, gathering the documents. Janelle stood with me. The FBI already has everything. I looked at Dad, then Trevor. Copies of all of this. Wire fraud, securities fraud, money laundering. The Arizona Attorney General's office has it too. And a reporter at Phoenix New Times. Dad's face went from pale to red. You went to the FBI? Your own family, the news breaks tomorrow morning, I said. I wanted to tell you in person. One last courtesy you never showed me. I walked toward the door. Behind me, Dad was yelling something about betrayal, about destroying the family name, about how I'd regret this. Trevor followed me outside, his voice switching from threats to pleading. Mel, wait. We can fix this. We can make this right. I'll pay everyone back. I swear you don't have the money, Trevor. You never did. It's all gone. Janelle and I drove away while he was still standing in the parking lot, his new Rolex glinting in the sun. The next morning, I woke to my phone buzzing nonstop. The Phoenix New Times had published their investigation. Scottsdale developers' fraud scheme targets minority business owners. The story was detailed, damning, impossible to ignore. By noon, footage of FBI agents raiding Dad's office building was all over local news. They carried out boxes of documents, hard drives, filing cabinets. Dad was led out in handcuffs, his face turned away from cameras. Trevor made it to Sky Harbor Airport before federal agents arrested him at the gate. He'd booked a one-way ticket to the Cayman Islands. The arrest was captured on security cameras, later leaked to news stations. He'd been holding a carry-on stuffed with cash. My phone exploded with messages. Some supportive, some hostile. Extended family calling me a traitor. Old friends from the neighborhood calling me a hero. The victims started coming forward with additional complaints. The fraud was even wider than my documents had shown. More families. More businesses. The FBI estimated total damages closer to $5 million. Mr. Henderson did an interview on local news. That young woman has more integrity than her whole family combined. She lost everything to do what was right. That's character. Social media was divided. Some people praised my courage. Others called me vindictive, said I should have handled it privately, questioned why I'd destroy my family over money, but the community that mattered, the one Dad had targeted, they understood. Mrs. Morales sent me a message. Thank you for giving us a voice. Thank you for seeing us. The Phoenix Small Business Coalition issued a statement supporting my decision to come forward. Local pastors mentioned the case in sermons about justice and accountability. Dad's lawyer released a statement denying everything, calling it a misunderstanding of complex financial transactions. The evidence said otherwise. The indictments came down in February. Richard Whitmore, 47 counts of fraud. Wire fraud, securities fraud, money laundering, conspiracy. The U.S. attorney held a press conference. Dad was facing 15 to 20 years. Trevor took a plea deal, agreeing to testify against Dad in exchange for a reduced sentence. 5 to 7 years. His lawyer claimed he'd been manipulated by his father, but the text messages told a different story. Civil lawsuits flooded in. Victims filing claims against Dad's company, against Trevor's startups, against anyone connected to the schemes. The court froze all of Dad's assets. Properties seized. Bank accounts locked. The Scottsdale mansion went up for auction. Mom filed for divorce in March. She moved into my studio temporarily, sleeping on my couch until she could find her own place. We stayed up late those first nights, her finally telling me everything she'd kept hidden, that she'd been documenting Dad's abuse and control for years. Not just financial, but emotional. The way he made her feel small, stupid, dependent. She kept records, knowing someday she'd need them to escape. "I should have protected you," she said one night, both of us crying. "I should have stopped him from taking your college fund." "You were surviving," I told her. "I understand that now." She used money from a hidden savings account one Dad didn't know about to pay off the last of my medical bills. "I've been putting money aside for 15 years, she admitted. "Planning my exit." The Victims' Restitution Fund was established using seized assets. Mr. Henderson was negotiating to reopen his restaurant expansion. The Morales family had lawyers working to reclaim their building. Justice was slow, imperfect, but it was happening, and I could finally breathe. 1 year later, I stood in the kitchen of a small house in Tempe that I'd rented with money from my new job. Not retail. Not catering. I'd started working as a victim advocate with the Arizona Attorney General's office, helping fraud victims navigate the legal system. The medical bills were paid. Not from Dad's money. I'd refused restitution for myself, asking that my portion go to other victims. I'd paid them off through steady paychecks and careful budgeting. It took 11 months, but every payment I made was mine. Mom had her own apartment now, a bright one-bedroom near ASU. She'd started taking art classes, something she'd given up when she married Dad. Her paintings covered my walls, bold colors, strong lines, nothing tentative about them. Janelle and I had started a non-profit together on weekends. Financial literacy workshops for small business owners, warning signs of investment fraud, how to protect yourself. Mr. Henderson taught a class on vetting business partners. Mrs. Morales talked about recognizing predatory lending. We called it Community Shield. The name felt right. Trevor's sentencing had been in September. 7 years. He'd cried in court, apologized to the victims. Whether he meant it, I couldn't say. I didn't attend. Some bridges you burn completely. Dad's trial was scheduled for next month. His lawyers had filed motion after motion, trying to delay. The evidence was overwhelming. The U.S. attorney expected a guilty verdict on most counts. I'd been asked to give a victim impact statement. I was still deciding whether I would. Brittany, Trevor's ex-girlfriend, had deleted all her social media after her recordings were used as evidence. Last I heard, she'd moved to California. The Scottsdale mansion sold for $2.8 million. The money went into the restitution fund. I drove past it sometimes. It looked smaller than I remembered. Dad's sentencing day came on a cold morning in January. I sat in the back of the courtroom, Janelle beside me, Mom on my other side. The judge read the verdict. Guilty on 43 of 47 counts. The courtroom was packed with victims, their families, reporters. When the judge asked if anyone wanted to make a statement, I stood. I walked to the front, my hands steady. Dad wouldn't look at me. "You taught me that surviving on my own was a punishment," I said, my voice clear. "You were wrong. It was preparation. You taught me that family loyalty meant silence. You were wrong about that too. Real loyalty means holding people accountable when they hurt others." I looked at the victims in the gallery. Mr. Henderson nodded at me. Mrs. Morales had tears on her cheeks. "You tried to destroy these people. But they're still here. Still building. Still fighting. And so am I." The judge sentenced him to 18 years. Full restitution to all victims. I walked out of that courthouse into bright Arizona sunshine, Mom's hand in mine, Janelle waiting by the car. We went to Mr. Henderson's restaurant. It had reopened last month, the expansion finally happening. The lunch rush was packed. Families, business people, teenagers after school. The smell of barbecue and cornbread filled the air. He saw us come in and broke into a huge smile. Melissa! Your table's waiting. He'd saved us the best spot, by the window. Brought out plates of brisket and ribs, mac and cheese, collard greens cooked the way his grandmother taught him. On the house, he said. Always. Emmer Henderson, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. He pulled up a chair. You gave us justice. Let me give you lunch. We ate together, laughing, sharing stories. Other victims stopped by our table. The Johnsons, who'd recovered most of their investment. The Washington family, whose property was out of foreclosure. Mrs. Morales brought her granddaughter, the little girl shy but smiling. This was family. Not blood. Not obligation. Choice. Support. People who showed up for each other. My phone buzzed. Mom had texted, proud of you, baby. Always. I looked around the restaurant, at these people who'd survived, who'd rebuilt, who'd refused to let my father's greed destroy them. Dad was right about one thing. I was good at surviving, but he never understood that survival isn't about being alone. It's about knowing who deserves your trust, your loyalty, your love. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to know that doing the right thing, even when it costs you everything, is always worth it. Drop a comment about a time you had to stand up to family, when you had to choose justice over loyalty. And subscribe to Revenge with Jessica for more stories about people who refused to stay silent, who chose truth over comfort, who proved that real family isn't who shares your blood, it's who shares your values. Remember, the people who truly love you will never ask you to ignore injustice. They'll stand beside you while you fight it.